Astra Travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, we had to head to therapy after we discussed Kaveh, Light of Kshatrwar. This week, we're going under the sea to discuss Remuria and the Sea of Bygone Eras.
Are you awash in a melody of confusion about Remuria? No, just us. Well, check out our website anyway. It's talesofteyvat.com, where Tiff has written a beautiful visual song for each episode for your musical eyeballs to devour.
While you're on our site, check out our past episodes and seasons, artist spotlights from the community for every topic, and some other goodies.
Finally, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. You can also feel free to give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts to help other travelers know that they can find some spunky sea splunkers to talk with.
Right?
Okay.
We're splunking?
I splunk every day. I don't
in a spunky way.
In a spunky lore splunker.
Oh my
into
God,
the sea. No, don't say no. The people need to know.
Isn't it spelunk?
No. That's how they pronounced it 10 years ago. We changed it, darling. That's no longer spelunk. What is it? Spelunk?
Spelunk, like if I'm spelunking in a cave.
I'm spelunking into the Sea of Remuria.
I'm scuba diving into the sea.
I mean, you could spelunk into the fated castle.
Well, I mean, regardless what's right, I think that a spunky splunk is the best way to say it.
A spunky splunk, lore splunk.
Uh-huh.
Into the Sea of Remuria. You're going to take a ride on Scylla, and we're going to go splunking. Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about the Sea of Remuria.
Please ask Scylla first before you jump on.
But anyway, spelunking aside, we're going to be talking about Remuria and the Sea of Bygone Eras, which is an area that you can unlock over in Fontaine. There's a newer area, I should say, where you can unlock the island of Pertrichor and follow a quest line out there that unlocks a lot of lore about Remuria, which is an ancient bygone city that was around in the Fontaine area.
Yes.
So there's a lot that goes into this. There's actually a lot more than just this quest that tells you about the past. Some artifact sets tell you about it. There are notes you can find. You know, as per usual, Genshin likes to send us on a lore scavenger hunt. So we wanted to start the episode with a quick refresher of the Fontaine timeline and where Remuria falls onto that timeline. It's kind of like talking about, like, you know, Europe like over the years in like a history class.
Who was conquering who?
Basically, yeah.
Well, I mean, it is based on like ancient Roman history, right?
Yeah. And I even read like some comparisons to like King Arthur and everything, which was fun.
Maybe a little bit of Greece.
Grease lightning.
Definitely.
Go Grease lightning. You just look over and Paimon's in a leather jacket all of a sudden. You're like, whoa.
John Travolta was one of the bosses that you had to fight down there.
Oh, yeah. No. He's one of the Blues Brothers that passed R.I.P.
Oh my God. John Travolta is Boethius.
No. But yes. Anyway, so Fontaine's history starts way, way, way back when with the original Hydro Dragon Sovereign.
Actually, before we get to the Hydro Dragon, can we back up just even a little bit more?
Of course.
Just because the lore technically talks about it, the first era, which I think is safe to assume is the primordial one era. And they say that it lasted countless generations and was all about the humanity and angels getting along, now that we know that the Seelies are angels, getting along until humanity stopped listening to the heavens and started seeking to reach beyond their given fate. And so the primordial one was like, excuse me, who do you think you are? And destroyed all of humanity, all of the first version of humanity with floods.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, most people who have read any kind of religious text or a summary of a religious text know there's like a flood myth, and many religious beliefs include a flood myth. And the only people who survive this onslaught of flooding were disconnected from the past and became sort of separated and were described as quote unquote barbarians and just lived in their own like barbarian quote unquote tribes. So that happened. And then they live untold years until what includes the rise and fall of Gurabad, which is interesting. Then we have the taking of the Hydro Dragon. So I'll turn it back over to you, Feeny.
Flooding, crazy. Then we have a Hydro Dragon. And the Hydro Dragon is eventually slain, not in the fun way, by the Primordial one.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, we have our whole situation with Egeria. So we have the fact that the original Hydro Dragon sovereign was the heart of the Primordial Sea, which was native to Teyvat, or the world in which Teyvat is in.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew they needed some other type of being to control the Primordial Sea and be that heart. So Celestia created Egeria.
Yeah, it's probably the ruler of life or the shade of life, which is one of the 4 shades of the primordial one.
And they create Egeria and they say, all right, you're going to be the new heart of this land. Then, though, Egeria gets locked away for committing war crimes. Well, just regular crimes.
They had good intentions.
For sinning.
For sinning.
She had her little group of Oceanids, her little flock of Oceanids, and she was like, they're so sad and they just want to run around on the surface of this area. And so she gave them human bodies. And if there's one thing we know about Celestia, it's like, do not give godly power to lesser creatures. And they were like, you have been cursed with this sin and you are doomed to be flooded over and over again every couple hundred years.
You know what, Celestia? Maybe you should look yourself in the eye in a mirror.
Flood themselves up in the air.
I feel like Amanda got really mad for a second.
I did. I really they're like, do not give power to lesser beings. I'm like, what about you? Destroying the dragons for no fucking reason.
Oh, suddenly she's on the dragon side. Okay.
I never wasn't on the dragon side. I think we need to make that clear. I just am not into the dragons destroying the Archons because the Archons are innocent in the Celestia happenings because that is the primordial one.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so when Egeria gets locked away into her cage, she's put into sinks. She's put into Sing Sing, and there's like a guard there and everything. It's great. People aren't allowed to go talk to her. And on top of that, there won't be another dragon sovereign born until after Egeria is let out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, Celestia, why? Celestia was really hoping that they just leave Egeria in jail forever.
Yeah.
Well, I just assumed that it's because the primordial sea being, the origin of all life onto that, basically. So, since Egeria was made of that, in the absence of like the Hydro Dragon, she's sort of taking the place of the Hydro Dragon. And so if she's in the primordial sea, which is like the life-giving source of Teyvat, that like there won't be another dragon born because she's sort of like the placeholder for it. That's how I took it.
Which would be a good reason why Celestia wanted to keep her down there too.
Yeah.
So this way a new dragon wouldn't get formed.
Because they're scared of that shit. Yeah.
They're scared of a lot of shit.
As they should be.
They're very fragile.
And while Egeria is in prison, she is guarded by Scylla, the fell dragon prince, who we'll talk a little bit more about later. But they were actually a Bathismal Vashop who followed the Hydro Sovereign originally, which is fun. So then, this Hydro Sovereign's friend is basically told, hey, go guard the new heart of the sea. And it's like, okay. That used to be my buddy, but whatever.
Which I have questions, but we can get to
that. And then we have Remuria. So Remuria is founded by Remus and Sybilla. And so after Remuria is founded by those two people, Remuria eventually falls. Egeria is released from prison. And then Egeria, with the help of others, establish what we now know as Fontaine. We know that at some point Nouvelette is born. And we come all the way to modern day Teyvat.
And Focalor takes Egeria's place after she dies.
Yeah. So Remuria is falling in between the time of Egeria being locked away for committing oceanid sins,
Uh-huh.
and Fontaine being formed when Egeria is released from prison. So basically, this is the Egeria jail era.
Yes.
And I feel like she's kind of sitting in jail like, this is what happens when you locked me away. You made me and then locked me up for making other glorious things.
Which, do we know, is it confirmed that this is sort of around the time? Because I'm assuming this is around the time of the Archon War, but I don't know if it's super clear in the lore if this was during that time.
Well, does Gorobod fall before the Archon War?
It's also unclear, but we know that Deshret is around at that point.
Right.
The hard part with the timeline here in regards to the Archon War is that the only really solid thing that we have is the fall of Gorobod, which we know Deshret was involved in, but the Archon War didn't really take place in Sumeru. Rukkhadevata, Deshret, and Nabu Malikata decided they were going to rule together.
I think it might be occurring, though, at the same time as the Archon War, just because I want to say someone mentions like 2 millennia.
Okay.
I think. I get the vague vibe that this was actually occurring like during / right before the Archon War.
Which would also make sense because there clearly wasn't a struggle to be an Archon over there either.
Oh, yeah, because it was it was still just flooded. But there was like the fleeing of Sumeru.
But now like Egeria is imprisoned underwater, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't just make that up because it was the primordial sea.
Yeah, it's like the depths of the primordial sea. So like she's not just underwater, she's under the water's water.
Yeah, no one's finding her, especially Fontainians.
Except Remus.
Except for Remus, yeah. I mean, well, he had some help.
But before we jump into the actual history of Remuria from start to finish, there's like a handful of characters I think it'd be really important for us to just like quick get out there who they are. We'll deep dive a little bit more into their stories afterwards. So Travelers, this is definitely the time if you want to take notes. If you've ever thought about taking notes during a Tales of Teyvat episode, this might be helpful because there are 2 names that are very similar. So we start with Egeria, who is the Archon who's in jail, the heart of the sea. Then we have Remus, the God King. He is one of the original founders of Remuria.
There's Scylla, the dragon prince, and then there's Sybilla, the Seelie.
The golden bee.
Yes, both very important characters. And Sybilla also is a part of the founding of Remuria as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then 2 very important characters is Cassiodor and Boethius. They are both people who work directly under Remus, and we'll get a little bit more into their titles and everything later. But they are basically like brothers forced to fight against one another. And then we have Irenaeus, who is a survivor of a Fontainian tribe, who then goes on to lead a rebellion against Remuria.
Yeah, it's very contrasted with Cassiodor.
Yeah, and I think that's like the basics, right? Of the important cast of characters.
Yeah, I think so.
There will be some other characters mentioned. I feel like I'm introducing like Little Shop of Horrors on Broadway. I'm like, this is Seymour. He gets a killer plant.
No, wait, not cats?
No. Brendan, I hate cats. Stop bringing it up.
You were so wonderful in Cats yourself.
How would you know?
I just
Did you see the DVD? Because there's a DVD
Not
somewhere.
yet.
I didn't buy that one.
I don't know. I'm going to be calling up Bernie and trying to figure that out.
No, he doesn't have it. No cats. Do not call my father. Do not pass go. Do not collect the DVD.
Do not collect Nat
No cats.
Or catnip, sorry.
Catnip. Catnap. So many naps. Anyway, so then we actually get to the beginnings of Remuria, which actually starts us off in Sumeru.
Mm-hmm. So there was this god named Remus who was a singer, loved his little gig, loved to hang out in the oases of Sumeru. But then there was this little guy named Deshret who got a little too big for his britches. And Remus, who also had an ego, was like, I'm not into this. I'm out. I'm leaving. I'm not going to just worship, a fellow god So Remus went to what is now Fontaine, which was still very flooded at the time, and they would refer to it as like the high waters, and accidentally stumbled upon this ancient city that had one survivor in it, which was Sybilla. And Sybilla was a Seelie that was standing watch over an Irminsul tree and was devolved basically down into the form of a golden bee, although I think it was sort of like a group of golden bees.
Mm-hmm.
But that was Sybilla. And Sybilla was like, even though I'm super devolved and can like barely think for myself, I can still see the future. You were fated to come here. You're going to be a wonderful ruler. You're going to have a magnificent kingdom, but then your kingdom will perish. And then he's kind of like, all right, I guess that's fine. And then the Irminsul tree turns into a giant golden ship, and they run around doing like this weird conquest thing where they just go from island to island in these high waters of what is now Fontaine, either convincing or conquering different tribes and forcing them to become a part of what we know as Remuria.
Can we just stop for 1 second and say, A, that a Seelie was involved in this is so weird.
I know. There's still so much we don't know about them.
Sybilla being a Seelie is just like this crazy turnaround of like, okay, Angel, what, you're out conquering shit now? What the fuck?
Yeah.
She's an angel bee like me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Are you gonna make a ship out of a tree?
I'm just kidding. I'm more of a devil bee.
Devil bee? No, you're just a kind bee.
Oh.
Not
Go
an angel bee, though.
on.
Sorry. Not an angel. Kind, though. No angels. I don't think anyone on this podcast could be an angel.
Hey.
I'm sorry. I'm
It's
talking for
like,
myself, too.
excuse me?
So
Fuck.
you talk about Rosaria's ass too much. But
Oh, wow.
anyway, I also wanted to
You
say,
see what you did there?
It's called sexual repression.
Mm-hmm.
listen, I don't make up the rules.
Angels are actually very sexual. Just
Are they?
kidding.
I mean, if we pull out the what is it? Is it the biblical look of an angel? Isn't it like terrifying? Like what
I don't
angels
know.
really look like?
I mean, I don't know if we could really say what they really look like.
Oh, I can.
I just meant because they're not. You might not think they're
Cenobites.
real.
They look like Cenobites from the Hellraiser movies.
No, according to biblically accurate angels, they're like fucking terrifying. Like some of them are human-like and others are like eyes.
Ew.
Just saying.
Very Neon Genesis.
Yeah. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to say quickly was just the fact that Sybilla was only guarding an Irminsul tree that then turned into a ship.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean one Irminsul tree? I thought there was one tree to rule them all. When did we get more than one?
It's like a branch.
Yeah, I figured it was like a little mini tree.
But I thought that Irminsul like branched out too, still like with like the ley lines. Isn't that still?
Yeah, like the domains where we go and use the.
Oh, so we think it's like a domain tree.
Yeah, like a little
Okay.
out branch.
That makes more sense.
Not like the tree. Like
Well, I was thinking
not
like
Ruben
trees
Nevada's
out in
tree.
public.
oh no. They're too shy to be out in public.
Well, no, because
Amanda.
remember they were like in an ancient city and she was like the only survivor. I'm assuming she was like had some kind of mystical tie to this tree that kept her from like basically kept her alive when everyone else was gone after the flood.
There were some other bees with her, but they may have devolved even more where like she had nobody to talk to. So that's why she was like, hey, dude, you're the first one here. You know what? I think this is going to happen. You should take me with you. Get me the fuck out of
Yeah.
here.
I actually question if she was the Shade of Life.
Oh, interesting. Because at that point, Egeria would have already been created,
Yeah, and she was in prison.
and the Shade of Life wasn't really involved in anything else from there.
And based on what we know happens later, she can sort of create fate in a way. So
Mm.
I definitely feel like there's something special about her as a Seelie, Sybilla.
Well, they refer to her as the prophet within the artifact set that also talks a lot about Remuria.
Yeah, maybe she's the shade of fate, if there is one.
Ooh. Who knows, right?
The artifact type is the fragment of harmonic whimsy.
Harmonic whimsy just sounds like more spelunking. But Brandon, let's go back to our conquistador days.
Yes, Our conquistador days. Yeah. So
I heard conquistador.
conquistador. Or conquistador. No, I think you had a conquistador. Yeah. So the Irminsul tree, somehow Sybilla is able to turn this tree into a giant golden ship, which this is like the beginning of, I think, a lot of weird symbolism. And it sort of admit within the lore that a lot of the anecdotes that get passed down from Remuria are very symbolic and mysterious. So I think this is sort of the first example of that, of like, okay, this Irminsul tree turns into a ship and they're in an ancient city, but like, I guess they're underwater, but who knows? And then it's like the golden boat, which it gets called the Golden Fortuna, which is fate, another word for fate. And so they're riding through the high waters, conquering and uniting all these disparate tribes in the region. So it's just feels very like vague and symbolic. So Remus, he teaches all these people that he's like collecting how to farm, how to build cities and temples, and most importantly, how to appreciate music and art.
Unlike the people of Sumeru under the ruling of a czar, as we spoke about in our cafe episode recently.
Well, this probably would have been still during the time of Deshret, right? So I think they were probably, I mean, I guess depending on how long this went on, they would have been ruled by the Triad and Sumeru. So they were probably doing great still, but I don't know.
I was just joking because like in Sumeru, they were like, fuck the arts. Like in modern day.
Yeah, Azar was when the pendulum swung the other direction.
Yeah, Azar was not even a thought at this point.
Yeah.
His grandparent probably wasn't a thought.
But, things are going really well, but, there are seers, and it says seers plural, but these include Sybilla, who is, like Tiffany said, a prophet. And she is very much like, your nation will be destroyed. And Remus is like, oh, God, you keep bringing that up. I got to figure something out.
You're such a buzzkill.
Yeah.
You golden bee.
Yeah, you golden bee. Buzz off.
I felt like I needed to do the extra sino and try and explain it there too.
No.
So Remus is like, how am I going to avoid this, everyone's fate as I'm like building this fantastic kingdom? So he eventually gets to meet Egeria in her prison in the Primordial Sea.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
How did he make it there? I guess because he's Sumerian, right? Like he could make it safely through the Primordial Sea. Like
he wasn't going to dissolve.
Maybe the Golden Fortuna can just like turn into a submarine.
Well, but also he got down there and then he wasn't like, hey, let me go knock on the door and go talk to her. He instead fought a dragon for 30 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But just real quick, too, before we jump into the fight, just a quick reminder to travelers that Fontainians, through this curse, they'll dissolve in the primordial seawater. So just a quick connection that Remus, being Sumerian and / a god, who knows if he's actually Sumerian, he would survive. He would not dissolve.
He was not an Oceanid.
It's interesting because when you play through the Archon quest, and you're dealing so heavily with Egeria and, Focalor and the curse, the original sin and all of that, it's like you don't realize that there's this whole other civilization that also had to deal with this curse. And that this curse, it wasn't building just from, the time that, or maybe it was, I mean, I guess it's a little vague, but it's not necessarily building just from the time that Egeria creates the Oceanids. I think Sybilla and whatever other seers who are advising Remus make it very clear that no, the only constant is change. And every few hundred years, your society is going to get wiped out.
Yeah.
And so Remus is like, well, I guess I got to go see like the originator of this sin and see if there's something I can learn.
And then fights a fucking dragon.
Yeah. He gets down to her prison and the depths of the primordial sea, and it's being guarded by the dragon Scylla. And they fight, like Tiff was saying, they fight for 30 days. And it was, it sounded crazy. It was like the ocean was boiling. It was like very violent sounding, right?
Yeah, like it wasn't like a A little me kind
It
of
wasn't a little tiff, if you will.
Which I kind of gives us like a very small insight to like what the war between the dragon sovereigns and the primordial one must have been like.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This is a god king, right? Fighting a dragon prince, a fell dragon prince, which I have a lot of questions about the fell dragon shit, but
I know. It makes you wonder if Scylla, because Scylla in different dialogue actually has very shaming things to say about, the usurper and really calls Remus sort of like a usurper offshoot.
yeah.
Meaning like Celestia, like, usurped my entire kind and how dare you like come anywhere near me. So Scylla is definitely like on Team Dragon.
Well, as a dragon, makes sense.
Yeah, but is also standing guard over Egeria's prison, and Egeria's imprisoned by Celestia. So it's Scylla, in a way, is doing the bidding of Celestia.
Feared of death.
Fear of death. Yeah, that's exactly what I was wondering. I'm like, is it just because Scylla is like, I'm a survivor? And is like, I'm not gonna do anything that will get Celestia to kill me because I just watched so many of my brethren die. So I'm going to do my job as a prison guard, even though I don't necessarily agree with it.
But also, just to say too, there's this possibility that Scylla could have a weird connection to Egeria just because like they put the heart of the primordial sea into Egeria. So I'm
Right.
curious too if it's possible Scylla thought Egeria was a dragon sovereign.
Mm.
They might
Right.
not know this whole no dragon sovereign shall be reborn until Egeria is out of jail. There's a possibility that Scylla thought they were guarding their god, their person.
Right.
Like
he
that's a good
feels,
point.
He feels protective of Egeria because of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
because regardless, even if Scylla knew that she wasn't a dragon, this is like the new heart of the sea, and I've been following the heart of the sea for so long.
Mhm.
Right.
And wasn't Egeria technically born from the primordial sea?
Hmm.
So I'm sure that also being like a native creature because of that feels a little bit more at home.
Right.
And also just the travelers, when we say dragon, like imagine child's narwhal, because that's kind of what Scylla looks like when we see Scylla, years and years in the future during the game.
Hmm. Although that version of Scylla is made of ichor.
Oh, true.
But yeah, so, he and Scylla fight for 30 days until they're both exhausted. And then Remus is like, oh, that was great. And Scylla's like, oh, foolish human. And then Remus tells Scylla like why he's there. And Scylla's like, oh, this is very entertaining. I'm going to let you go in and talk to her. So Remus goes and talks to Egeria, and Egeria tells him all of her secrets, which we don't get to find out what those are.
Boo.
Mhm.
And she does not offer any kind of solution to the fated destruction of Remuria. So he's like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to take this goblet of what they call source water, just water from the primordial sea, I guess, and then vows to create an ichor that will withstand any water to house the souls of his people. So he's like, I'm going to take this, I'm going to create some other kind of liquid that will allow my people to live on and not be dissolved by the primordial seawater later. And Scylla's actually really inspired by Remus and leaves the primordial sea to join his cute little effort.
Yeah, and they become like friends, right?
Yeah, they become like teammates, I would say. I don't know if friend is too strong a word, but you know what I mean? It's like Scylla's definitely like, okay, he's trying something interesting and I'm going to go along with this and see what we can do to like make things better.
Yeah.
But then there's just the idea, because my brain can't get around this. Scylla's a giant fucking dragon,
Uh-huh.
water dragon, and Remus is just a dude on a boat.
I know, but we don't know what Remus looks like, too, because he might be humongous. He might be a giant,
That's
Yeah.
true. We only see the other ones later on.
Because like we hear stories about like certain gods being the size of mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a Guoba thing.
Yeah, or even a Zhongli thing.
But also, haven't you seen Shrek, Tiff?
Yeah.
Donkey and the dragon fall in love, and there's a giant size difference.
Yeah, but that dragon's on the land. This one's like in the water.
So is he. He's got a boat.
But just imagine, like, broop, broop, like just going down the water. Like, I just imagine this regular sized human on Risley's boat, and then just a dragon, like, alongside it.
Do you think Risley's boat is like a miniature version of the original?
Yeah, because he built that boat based on the Fortuna.
Yeah, he was inspired by the Remuria ship.
I'm just wondering, how big was the Remuria ship?
Well, it depends on how big Remus was.
Right.
The size really matter.
Well, the question also becomes that our friend on boat with Remus is a bee.
Yeah.
So how big were these bees?
Or a group of bees, maybe?
What do you call a group of bees?
Well, we saw the
A
bees.
hive?
Why was that so simple?
Well, I guess the hive is sort of the nest, so I don't know if there's a different name for the
Is it a
actual-
swarm?
A swarm, yeah, a swarm of bees. That's it. Or a colony.
You know who really wouldn't like to be on that fucking boat? Macaulay Culkin's character.
Oh my
from
God.
Oh,
Anytime I think of like a mass number of bees, that's what I think of.
oh,
Veda would be highly triggered.
Wow.
This is how my friend
Seriously.
died.
I hadn't thought of that in
Thomas
that movie in so
J.
long. In case anyone's wondering, she's talking about the movie My Girl.
I love My Girl. It's so good. My Girl 2 was just as good too. I enjoyed
It
that
was
one as
good.
well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, Macaulay Culkin is now Remus, just hoping to survive with this group of bees.
So Remus, his mind wheels are a turning, and in the meantime, I think he's promoting 4 humans in his kingdom, giving them the title of Harmos, and basically making them co-rulers of Remuria. And this was also a big thing that was seen as like his biggest sin, is sharing more godly power with humans.
Yeah.
And this sort of naturally leads to revolts and corruption, but it's also kind of seen as like the divine causing that
Mhm.
as a consequence of his sin, which, you know, again, that's more just like symbolic religious iconography type of storytelling. You know, God don't like that. Don't do it. Like the ego of humankind sort of thinking that it compares with God.
Right.
There's a lot of that going on in the storyline and in the game storyline in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so Remus, he somehow finds a way to read fate and write new fates for humanity via his symphony. And this is where things are going to get really vague.
Let me be part of your symphony.
What is that from?
The song.
What from
Is
what?
that from the game?
No.
What song? What
No.
song is it?
You've never heard that song?
I don't think so. Let me
What?
be part of your symphony? What?
I don't know who sings it.
Is this a Disney song?
No. It's popular. I think it's popular because Zara Larson is on it.
I feel like I've heard of Zara Larson.
I think I just want to be part of your symphony. Will you
I've-
hold me tight
no, I've
and not
never-
let go?
Never heard it, ever.
You guys don't go out to the club enough.
That's true.
So come to Twink Tank. We're having a buy one get one free Thursday night special. Come down to Port Ormos. Special guest adventuring featured
Two
this
for
week
one Jello
only.
shots.
Woo! We will not be playing the symphony found in Remuria. Don't worry.
Well, that would have gotten me there.
Yeah, you just missed out on a customer.
Mm-hmm. Because I love the music in Sea of Bygone Eras. I may love the music in Twink Tank too. There's a good chance. Does Twink Tank have a playlist yet?
Ooh.
I think Twink Tank does have a playlist, and you can find it on the website.
So here's the thing. Like, it gets so vague / symbolic. So I'm curious to hear how you two interpreted this little twist in the storyline of Remus somehow creates new fates. Well, first of all, he combines that little cup of primordial seawater that he took from Egeria's hometown, with immortal stone, and that creates the golden ichor that he can somehow use in combination with Sybilla to create new fates for all of the Remurians, and then it also dissolves their bodies and allows them to inject their souls into golems. Yeah, thoughts?
So yeah, golems.
It was very Narcittenkreuz to me. I was just like, wow, we're doing this. Everything in this area repeats itself over and over again.
Yeah, totally. Like it's definitely like generation 1 of Narcittenkreuz, which is like, generation what, like 5 or
35,
something.
yeah. Yeah, it was just like, so he does this and like basically like it flows down the aqueducts from like the palace to all the people. And it's basically poison juice. And everybody was drinking it. It was like the Kool-Aid.
Lots
But
of
they
Kool-Aid.
also become golems, right? They become like their bodies are transferred into these like stone constructs.
Well, most of them all turn into like a regular ass stone type of thing. But then the important ones are like marble-ish.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think I want to go back to the ichor for a moment. So I know that in a lot of like Greek mythology, an ichor is like a blood. So it's almost like a very like blood of Christ situation going on. Like they took water from the primordial sea, which one could say is the blood of the Fontainians, which is also curious because we know that these are all Fontainians living in Remuria, now drinking primordial seawater turned into golden blood, and they're not dissolving.
Are they drinking it, or does it just touch them and they turn into the other constructs?
But regardless, technically primordial seawater should have turned them into dust, like into a puddle.
No, because they're not Oceanids.
Well, these are Fontainian people, though. At this point, the Oceanids have been turned into humans walking on the land.
But I thought these people were or the non-Oceanid version. Like these are the savages and barbarians.
I was with Feeny because I took it as these were Oceanids that were turned human by Egeria, and that's why she's in prison.
And I think there are like these like more barbaric tribes because they didn't know what to do after Egeria was imprisoned. Like they had no leaders.
I thought they were like OG like people, like indigenous.
No, I get where you're coming from, but I think here that the term barbarian is also very like
offensive.
Well, yes, but it's also our narrator, like, knowing that Remus is a god king and that he came from Gurabad, where everything was the freaking Wizard of Oz, like the Emerald City, that a barbarian to him could be like us going camping. It's very subjective.
I think it's also symbolizing like the northern Germanic tribes from actual ancient Roman history.
Yeah, that's also true.
Which I don't know too much about. I just know that, Rome was like, oh no, we gotta like get rid of these barbarians in the north. And that in the game becomes Egeria sympathizers.
Who are quote unquote barbarians in this situation.
And they're like against Remus and Remuria.
It's also like he's like such an invader. Like even if he was from Fontaine and like was originally from like a Remuria, like say Remuria had always been there. But he's not. Like, he's literally from Sumeru on top of this. Like, he keeps, like, digging his hole deeper. So the Phobos, which is the symphony that Brandon was mentioning, it is created from Remus and Sybilla. And Sybilla is, like, she doesn't have a will, but, like, her wisdom is in it. And she's able to grant wishes through it. And it's kind of just, like, she sacrifices herself because Sybilla dies with the creation of Phobos in the symphony. And she really just wanted to like grant people their wishes, and that was really the goal of the Phobos, was to like make humanity prosper through Remuria.
And we've mentioned this many episodes ago, I think, is, one thing we know about Remuria is that they used music as basically a language.
Yeah.
So, music was very central to the Remurian civilization. And when he creates Phobos, which is the Grand Symphony, he also uses the Golden Ship, which was, I'm assuming created by Sybilla, to make a massive harp that would be used to play the Phobos.
Yep.
So basically, Sybilla becomes the symphony, and then the ship becomes the instrument that plays the symphony, that creates, and the symphony again is creating new fates for all of the Remurians so that they can escape the Celestia prophecy.
And these fates are based on their own wishes and like wants.
Right. And they call the Remurians that turn into the golems, they call them ascended Remurians.
Yes.
And they start seeing themselves as superior to regular humans. And because Sybilla's life force was imbued just naturally as a Seelie, which we've seen this a little bit with the Lord of the Night as well, where we know that like Seelies are just sort of hardwired to make all humans happy.
Yeah.
So that was happening way back when with Sybilla. So even though she had sort of devolved into a golden bee, her life force was still imbued with this desire to make all humans happy. So when she becomes the Phobos, she begins reflecting all these selfish desires of humanity in addition to the good desires. And this leads to a bunch of destruction and war. And it adds to this sort of pitting of Remurians against other Fontainians, like the Lock folk, like the other Oceanids, who are not really seen as like a part of Remuria, these northern quote unquote barbarian tribes that we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates all this battling, and it's basically creates a war, which leads ultimately to, the destruction of Remuria.
And prior to this war, though, we do get to see a pretty in-depth story of two of the humans who came to rule under Remus, the two of the Heartmosts. I feel like we really get into Boethius and Cassiodor.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, their story kind of starts to intertwine with the war because they become antagonists against one another. They're almost like the antithesis of each other.
Well, at first they're besties.
Which is sad.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Boethius is, one of the earlier Harmos, or one of the earlier co-rulers of the region, and is very much one of the conquistadors, and actually goes to the tribal village that Cassiodor is from, and his little platoon or whatever basically slaughters / enslaves all of that tribe except for two people, which is Cassiodor and Irenaeus. And Irenaeus gets snatched up and taken in by a chieftain of some other tribe, while Cassiodor basically goes off with Boethius to Remuria, and he defects essentially to the Remurian Empire.
Just to pause on Irenaeus, she literally hides under the dead bones of her fallen comrades.
Trauma.
Yeah, so like while Boethius is convincing Cassiodor to join Remuria and come with them, Irenaeus is hiding. She's like, oh, fuck, fuck. And then I'm assuming after they left is when this other chief comes and like takes her away. The chief who takes her is from a northern border tribe called Remuria, and their whole purpose is to make sure that they don't get taken over by Remus. Like, they're like, our goal is to help all of the tribes not get taken over.
Yeah, and they're, for some reason, they are like aware of Egeria. They remember her, I guess, from when she turned the Oceanids human. So they're like, we worship Egeria. We want her to come back. And Remus is like this imposter who's like coming in and taking over. And we are going to resist that. So it's interesting because it almost reminds you of years later with like the schism between Elaine and Marianne versus Renee and Jacob.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, like, we find out eventually, too, that, like, Renee and Jacob actually were inspired a little bit by some of the stuff they find note-wise from Remuria.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Remuria cursed this group anyway.
Yeah, like a lot of the Narcissus research comes from one of the other Harmos, whose name was Aurelius.
And just before we move back on the Cassiodor and Boethius and like that, Cassiodor joining Remuria, Irenaeus and Cassiodor were actually like really good friends. And she was like this beautiful singer prior to joining this other tribe. And she was gifted by Cassiodor like this butterfly wing, which was like a symbol of like being connected and like I'll be there for you type of thing.
Seemed very romantic, no?
It did, which is what makes me wonder if Cassiodor thought that she was dead. Because you really think he would have left her behind like that?
Right.
Or did he know that she was alive and he decided to defect to be like, all right, get out of here. I'm going to distract them.
Even if he did think she was dead, I believe he does find her later because he tries to get her to stop her own actions against Remuria. It's really tragic because, and we've seen this in other storylines before, like some of those early Mondstadt characters, where Irenaeus very much feels like she's on the right side of history. And so does Boethius, so does Cassiodor. But Irenaeus, she's like, no, like you slaughtered my tribe, and now I'm fighting for Egeria. But then she herself also becomes bloodthirsty fighting for Egeria, and she does all kinds of messed up shit too, to the point where one of the other Harmos, Egeria, or however you pronounce her name, questions if Irenaeus even believes in Egeria because some of the things that she does are so grotesque that she's like, I don't think anyone who would do that believes in any god.
Which I guess before we jump too far into Cassiodor's trip, and maybe we'll finish a little bit of Irenaeus prior to her fighting Remuria. So she actually ends up becoming the ruler of this tribe that takes her back. And it's kind of weird that she did that because like she doesn't have any bloodlines to become like the heir. So there's a lot of questions as to how that happened. And she becomes a Lock Knight, and they're a group of knights who were charged with protecting Oceanids. And they also became a rebel group who fought against Remus and Remuria. So she was very aware of the Fontainian prophecy. And an Oceanid messenger came to her one day and told her about the pure grail. And the rumor and the legend with this grail was that it could grant any one wish and wash away whatever sin. So she decided she was going to try to find this grail, and for years was searching for it and never found it.
And she wants it to free Egeria from prison, right?
Yeah, the assumption is that she's using it to cure Egeria's sin against Celestia and forgive it. But she never finds it. And instead she's like, okay, F this. So she lies and she tells everyone that she can see the future in the Fontaine, like in the tribe, and that she is a prophet and she is a seer and that she is going to fight back against Remuria. And she gets these people to pledge themselves with Egeria. And they even say it's so crazy because she had no powers. Like this was just a human. Yeah. She was not a god. She didn't have a vision.
And they believe her.
And they believe her. And just a note, because I mentioned visions, like, I just wanted to say that, like, no one in this storyline has a vision that we know of.
You know what she does have, though? Farina's sword.
Yes, that's true. You know who also has that sword? Micaiah. But it's just very curious that, we've talked a lot about, oh, it's not Micaiah. Who has it? I opened it up to see.
You took it away from Kaya? Didn't you give it to Albedo?
No, Albedo has Chioris now. Kaya has Clarins that I pulled by accident.
Oh, and so this weapon is the Splendor of Tranquil Waters. This way, if you did not know, Farina's weapon's name.
Farina's sword, yeah, it originally belonged to Irenaeus.
Oh my god, who the fuck has it? Do I not have it on anyone?
It's just
I just have like
inventory.
Wait, yeah, where's my inventory, man? Where is it? Oh wait, hold on.
Did you give it to Cloran?
No, I don't have Cloran. Oh, I gave it to Bennett.
Bennett.
Oh my god.
The Archon of Natland? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, facts. And I just wanted to mention the vision thing because we've been questioning when did visions start coming around. So it's interesting to note that in Remuria, none of these people got visions. And if anything, I feel like Cassiodor may have gotten one and he didn't. So anyway, she never finds the Grail. She decides that she's going to become this fanatic. She's going to convince everyone to follow her. And she says in part of her fanaticisms that she will not hurt, and neither will anyone in her tribe, anyone that has pledged themselves to Egeria. So if she was about to kill you and you're like, no, I pledge. She'd be like, cool. And she'd walk away. Just going with that.
Very of the time that this is based on.
Yeah, and so I'm going to leave it at that for now. That, just while we're talking about what Cassiodor and Boethius are up to on the other end, this is what she's doing. She's like getting this uproar going.
Yeah.
And you can also read a little bit more about her in a Fontaine book that's adapted. It's like a play on her that has some liberties and stuff. I think that it says it's kind of romanticizes her. It's called La Chanson d'Arenis. And you can get it over in the main area, one of the bookstores.
And so then we go over to Remuria. So we have...
On the flip side, we have Cassiodor and Boethius.
Which, just quick note too, Boethius was also one of the greatest musicians of Fontaine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really interesting that Cassiodor is like, I'm like with this great singer, and now I'm with one of the greatest musicians. It's like he's just like being serenaded by these people.
Yeah, probably based on Anicius, Manlius, Severinus, Boethius from actual ancient Roman history.
Ooh.
Manlius?
Manlius. Don't you love that?
It's very Roman.
Bros.
Bros before hoes, man. That was how Boethius got him.
Yeah.
Like, bros before hoes, let's go.
So he and Cassiodor were very close.
How close, though? Were they like close?
No, they were just fist bumping.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they were broy. Like Boethius, he convinces Cassiodor, or it sort of implies that he convinces Cassiodor to join Remuria. And Cassiodor's like, oh my God, this whole time I was a barbarian and now I'm civilized.
Woo!
And so, he eventually becomes a Harmos himself, and they go through an interesting journey together. So Boethius, he becomes increasingly of the opinion that all of these northern barbarian tribes need to just be shut down. And he's like, we need them to obey us. We can't just like rely on convincing them or conscripting them or annexing them or whatever. Like they need to just obey us and be a part of our empire. And Cassiodor is much more sympathetic to the other tribes. Gee, I wonder why. So they start butting heads a little bit. And this gets into the gradual storyline that Remus goes through. Because Remus is like, I created these golem people. He was really trying to do it, or at least the lore makes it seem like he was trying to do it to benefit them in the best way he could. He was trying to save them from death. But Boethius gets mad at him. I think at some point, Remus sort of goes into a slumber, which apparently gods just love to do in this game.
I know, it's so venti of him.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say that. Venti does that as well. I'm going to take a nap for
I need a little nappy nap.
a bunch of years. Yeah. But we don't really know like how long he was resting, right?
No, it's unclear.
So he, kind of wakes up and he finds out Boethius is sort of taking control a little bit and is like, no, we're just going to like make everyone obey us. And if they don't, we'll slaughter them, whatever.
I just imagine Remus waking up like that blinking guy, like the gif of the blonde guy blinking. Like, what? That is not what I planned.
Yeah, this is after Remus has enacted the Phobos, which is the grand symphony at the expense of Sybilla. And so all of his subjects are sort of now living this doctrine of whatever fate was decided for them by Phobos. And so he realizes when he wakes up that things are going wrong. And he's like, this is not good. So he actually separates Cassiodor from Phobos, meaning he gives Cassiodor his free will back. Because remember that Phobos is basically singing to all the ascended Remurians, and it's sort of dictating a new fate for everyone that is in the region. And so they're also getting corrupted by that fate because a lot of it is selfish and destructive. And so he's like, this isn't going right. So he trusts Cassiodor enough that he separates him from the Grand Symphony, gives him his free will back. And he's like, hey, I need you to like watch over and take care of this stuff because this is not going well.
Right. And at this point, this is when Cassiodor actually goes to visit Irenaeus because he's starting to realize that she is leading a rebellion against them now that he's like, not drinking the Kool-Aid. He's been unpoisoned, he's untapped from the Phobos. And so he wants to go and try to convince her to stop. And he goes over undercover to participate in a fighting competition. I was like, why does this game have so many fighting competitions? I'm like, Hazo, us with Kazuo when we first meet him.
Are they
like,
gonna maybe a Coliseum?
Maybe, who knows? So Cassiodor goes over, he goes undercover, and he wins. And the winner of this fight gets to actually go and sit down and talk to her. So he goes up and he's trying to like have this conversation and he's trying to convince her to stop and to stop the fighting, stop the war. Like he's trying to say like things are bad, like you don't know what you're getting yourself involved in. And somehow or another, his true identity gets revealed. And in the process of that, his fake golem body gets completely destroyed. And she's like holding it in her hands. And as his like consciousness is about to like float back to Remuria, because I guess that's what happens when your golem body dies. Like, I don't know.
Battlestar Galactica, actually.
It was just a lot for me. I was like, what is his? It was like a soul almost.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because we were just saying recently with Natland that was the first time we're seeing souls, but this felt soul-ish.
Well, yeah, it's supposed to be their souls. Their souls and minds were transferred into these bodies.
And so as this soul consciousness is getting ready to like depart back to Remuria, she basically promises to help him get back to his original form. And so that's their moment.
Yeah. And so they're basically at an impasse because he can't go back to his form he's still on watch to like protect Remuria, right?
Yeah. And also like he has to drink the Kool-Aid in order to get a golem body back.
Right.
But I will say it was interesting because when Remuria fell, it was said that he was out of state, which I'm assuming means he wasn't in Remuria.
Right.
So I'm wondering if Remuria fell while he was here.
Her. Right. Yeah. I assume that too.
Which is like, it's very romantic.
Yeah, definitely.
Like me coming to try to convince you to stop your war is what like kind of saved my life. But so Remus on the flip side, so Cassiodor's over here like trying to convince his ex-lover to, not like kill people.
Yeah, stop your holy war. And Boethius is like, we're killing everyone. Remus wakes up and is like, Boethius, stop it. What are you doing? And then Remus makes a deal with Scylla.
Which Scylla was our dragon prince.
I don't think Cassiodor even knew this was happening, but Remus is like, Scylla, I need you and all the other Fontainians, aka Oceanids and Bishops, to storm the capital.
Yes!
Have fun storming the castle.
And make it look like an invasion, even though Scylla secretly had another mission because Remus knew that he planned on sacrificing his own life to activate the Requiem, which was sort of the self-destruct code for the Phobos, the Grand Symphony. He's like, I'm adding this movement to the symphony, which will make it destroy itself. Will return all of the golems into their regular human flesh and bone bodies, which means everyone's getting dissolved. This is a failed experiment, and we're just going to give in to our fate. And Scylla tries it, and then bad things happen because Boethius is like, nope, I figured this out. And one of the other Harmos, Egeria, however you say her name, benefactrix, is involved, and she creates the chains that end up holding Scylla out of like blood and bone.
Yeah, and Boethius basically like tricked Scylla into going into like a trap, like it like kind of like ambushed him.
Right.
And locked Scylla away.
Didn't you think the lore with your Egeria it's very vague? Like you can't tell if she created the chains that hold Scylla with someone else's blood and bone or if it's her blood and bone. Because I'm like, did Boethius kill her and use her to create the chains?
Ooh.
Can I kind of say something like kind of crack theory-ish for this? I feel like your whatever her name, I'm not even gonna try. I feel like she could possibly be a Hexen Circle witch.
Ooh, okay.
Because she is described as kind-hearted. She is described as very knowledgeable about the nature of the false and true celestial signs. She's the one who said that Irenaeus didn't believe in God based on her actions, and that no religious person would do those things.
Oh, true.
And it's also someone that Cassiodor saw as a sibling. It felt like they had this very good-hearted relationship with them. And Boethius was hoping to recreate Remuria with her. So she must have been some sort of special. I know that she's technically human, but the fact that she was able to use the blood and bones of someone or something else to forge chains.
She was a witch. Yeah.
I wonder if she's B, if she's Mona's master.
Ooh.
Well, old ass bitches.
Yeah, we know Alice and Gold are that old, you know? Or old, maybe. Well, I guess we know Gold is from Conria. We don't know how old Alice is, but we assume she's minimally Conrian aged. She's at least 500. Now, this would make B very, very old, but Mona does describe her as an old hag, where Alice and Gold still seem to be described as young looking.
I love this idea that the Hexen Circle, like the ones that are immortal, clearly, or have long lives, are just like sprinkled throughout the history in different regions.
Yeah.
And it's so cool.
Well, and of course it's only a theory, but it also makes sense why Mona got involved in like the Steam Bird and everything. Because we know that like Mona writes for the Steam Bird in Fontaine, and we run into her during the Fontaine Archon quest, and she connects us with Nicole, which is a terrible witch's name. But I don't know. It's just like this idea that's been in my head is like that she could be a Hexen Circle witch or maybe someone more important. Because we do know that Cassiodor, plot twist, does end up having some level of longevity given to him despite being born as a human. So I definitely think it'd be possible for this person to also have longevity given to them.
Yeah, it's hard to say. And also, like, was that because of the Golden Ichor?
Yeah, we don't know.
But so we know that Remus, when he wakes up and is like, oh, I'm going to activate the Requiem, Boethius traps Scylla. And then what is bad is that Remus needed Scylla to be in the capital to channel the energy that gets released when he activates the Requiem to self-destruct the symphony, aka Phobos. So Remus ends up doing that while Scylla's trapped, which of course results in the destruction of Remuria, and it sinks into the ocean in an instant.
But my favorite part of this whole thing is that Remus goes to activate it, and Phobos is like, fuck you, Remus, you thought you'd win? And then it literally says, like, in an act of rage, Remus activated it anyway. Like, somehow was able to get past whatever Phobos's wall was, made it happen, and then died. Like, it's like, he was so pissed. He was like, you said fuck me? Fuck you.
Yeah, it sounds right. It sounds right. As like a egotistical god, he was like,
Yeah, he was like, you're not going to tell me what to do. I literally created you.
Yeah. Even though it's like actually like mostly Sybilla at that point.
And so this destroys all the bishops, all the Fontainians that were fighting, and all the Remurians that were there. Which is a little confusing because we know that Boethius fucking survives.
Yeah, Boethius does survive.
Like, where was he? He was over, like, blocking Scylla away?
Well, I don't know, because we don't really know exactly how much he was doing versus Egeria. So it's a little vague, we don't know. We do know that he survives, he disappears, he probably had some tricks up his sleeve. And Cassiodor also survives. And this is where they further split ways after this happens, where Boethius goes off and creates the Golden Troop, which is like a group of followers that are interested in resurrecting Remuria and the Phobos. This is where he's actually the one where it says that he spends 2 millennia resurrecting the Grand Symphony, which of course causes the nightmares in Pertrichor that kicks off the quest series in real time in the game. Yeah. Meanwhile, Cassiodor he founds the Marichasse Hunters to combat the Golden Troop. So they are like millennia long enemies.
Yeah.
He's given the title of Golden Hunter, and he takes like different forms over the millennia.
Mm-hmm.
The one that we see him as in game when we meet him is a cat.
Mm-hmm.
Osse? Osse?
Oh yeah, we call him Osse, but it's because
Osse, yeah.
after Remuria falls and Cassiodor joins Egeria's people, and he starts like helping and like escorting people around Fontaine, he ends up taking on the name, and I'm gonna say it wrong, Oronades of Oronopolis.
Mm-hmm.
And when he says that to Paimon in modern day Teyvat, Paimon's like, all right, Ozzy. Like, she's like, fuck that shit.
Yeah, we were calling him Ozzy, weren't we?
But just a quick refresher too for travelers who may have forgotten who the Marichasse Hunters are. They're a group of Fontainians after Remuria who hunted monsters using a very specialized sword technique, a technique that Chlorine still uses to this day. And at the time, they also made up the Marichasse Phantoms, but in modern day Teyvat, the Marichasse Phantoms are mostly Melazines.
Yeah, those are the Millilith of Fontaine.
And just to go back to the Golden Troop too, so Boethius founds them, and they're all these whoever survived Remuria and wants to build them up, like Brandon said. But they gather in the Fated Castle, which is the underground area underneath Pertrichor, where like the books float and everything. It's like super fucking cool and magical.
Mm-hmm.
And their studies led them to being able to put their consciousness back into golem bodies. So they were able to figure out how to do that. And Jacob from the Narcissus saga actually finds these notes and he uses them to help preserve his body. Now, the Golden Troop did a lot of shit, but including attacking the followers of Egeria, because once Remuria fell, Egeria was released from prison. I don't know if she was released from prison or since Scylla wasn't there to guard her, like if she just got out. I don't really know.
One day she was like, oh, fuck, this is open.
I think there's some part of the lore that says that, I mean, it could be unreliable narrator stuff, but it does say at some point that Celestia lets her out and sends her to be the Archon. And that's when she talks to Irenaeus.
So meanwhile, I just want to finish with the Golden Troop. So the Golden Troop, not only did they figure out how to put themselves back in the golem bodies, but they performed a lot of child sacrifice.
Like you do.
Like you do in Teyvat.
As one does, yeah.
Meanwhile, Cassiodor, like Brandon was saying, he had joined Egeria's people. He became the Golden Hunter, and he only got that title because of how well he killed Boethius's golems in the Golden Troop. So literally, like, he was like, I'm the founder of the Golden Troop, and Cassiodor was like, well, I'm the Golden Hunter. Fuck you. And they also founded the Marichasse Hunters basically to fight the Golden Troop. He survives as well over the next 2 millennia, giving guidance to the future generations. And in the meantime, we have our good old friend Irenaeus, who, like Brandon said, finally gets to have her moment to talk to Egeria.
Yeah.
And she's like, Egeria, look at all this blood I shed for you.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me the secret now of how to get rid of the curse. And Egeria's like, girl, I don't want child sacrifice. I'm not here for blood.
What do you think this is? Enkanomia?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, you can't get rid of the curse. Like, there's nothing you can do. And Irenaeus / whoever, however you say her name, Aaron. Yeah. Aaron is like, oh, I spent most of my life doing fucked up shit for no reason. And of course, at the time she's using the Farina sword, throws it away, and then disappears.
So who needs this shit anymore?
Great ending for her. Love that.
Yeah, she stumbled from the valley to never be seen again.
Uh-huh.
And it's really sad because we can assume where her people were because we have the island. Well, I guess it's an island technically, but the island and forest in Fontaine where that really beautiful tree is. And you find that one Melazine whose name is Vishop spelled backwards, Pajiv. Pashev. Right. That whole quest line takes place in Irenaeus and it's named after her, presumably. So I would assume that the people she ruled were over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very sad. And so that's kind of like the end of like our main characters. Remus died. So let's look at these main characters we introduced at the beginning. Remus, dead.
Sacrificed himself to activate the Requiem, which sort of stopped Phobos, although in game we fully stopped Phobos.
Then you have Sybilla, also sacrificed self to make Phobos.
Yeah, became the corrupt, crazy Phobos, who in turn corrupted Boethius.
We have Irenaeus,
Who walked away.
who walked away.
Fought a holy war, became a fanatic, and then, became disillusioned.
And then we have Egeria, who becomes a god and eventually dies during the cataclysm. We have Scylla locked away in these chains.
Which we end up freeing.
And we have Boethius and Cassiodor living for 2 millennium, doing shit behind each other's backs.
Yeah. So during the actual world quest that helps us learn all of this, in part, we end up helping free Scylla, who's been chained up
Free
for
Brittany.
2 millennia. Yeah, free Scylla. And then we also basically finish what Remus started and allow Scylla to channel the energy and finally destroy Phobos, which means that all of the golems that were sort of reactivated by Boethius, who spent 2 millennia resurrecting the Grand Symphony, they're finally destroyed. So Boethius is gone, and Cassiodor, of course, is gone. And Scylla is the winner.
I wonder how that feels. Like, Boethius spent 2 millennium trying to figure this shit out for, like, if you play as Ether, a blonde twink and a floating fairy to come and ruin it all in like 3 days.
Yeah.
You know, or like this blonde girl and her little floating fairy, like they come with a cat that you don't know is your mortal enemy at first.
The cat's just swimming around in the water.
Yeah, the cat, everyone's just like, this cat looks like Candace with its heterochromia.
Yeah.
No one knows it's Cassiodor in disguise, because we don't find out that this cat is Cassiodor because it's kind of having some memory losses. It's being eroded. Like, many of our gods have mentioned erosion. Zhongli specifically mentions it, but Cassiodor is definitely experiencing some erosion as well. Only knows themselves as Osse, doesn't know themselves, well, or as the longer version that we did shorten to Osse. But this quest starts by going to Pertrichor for the first time. So if you've never been to Pertrichor, go. Sorry, we spoiled it all.
Meet the Daydream Club.
Yes, so you go to Pertrichor and things are a little off, and the people have like these red things around them, and you're like, I think they're possessed. And they are, by Boethius and his symphony.
After 2 millennia, he finally restarts the Grand Symphony, and it just makes them like have insane nightmares in their waking life.
But again, just to back what Fiends was saying, what fucking timing? 2 millennia. He decided when Traveler was there to do this.
Well, it was the Doomsday Clock. I mean, time was a ticket.
True.
Now, I do want to say one thing now that we're talking a little bit about Pertrichor too, which is how Pertrichor was quote unquote rebuilt. So I'm a little confused, I'll be honest, on the timeline here, because it seems like Pertrichor was an OG location in Remuria that didn't sink underground or under the water. Because they do say that there's a lot of like architecture and artifacts and notes and things in Pertrichor that reflect back on the Golden Troop and Remuria, which you could see when you go there. Like, there's basically music notes on the windows. It has much more of a Greek look than anything else Fontaine. It's very like small Roman or Greek town, and they do definitely combine the two styles here. Unfortunately, they're not sticking to one or the other, because here there is a cave that you can go underground and dive and blah 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 blah. I'm assuming, and you guys tell me if you disagree, that Pertrichor was a part of Remuria originally.
Yeah, and like just like a piece that just never sank.
Yeah, it's like the bobbin, the bobbin that stays on top.
Yeah. The bobbin to the anchor of Remuria.
Oh, interesting.
So you have this character of Ruggiero, and he wanted to prove. Now, I don't know the timeline on this. So at some point after the fall of Remuria, Ruggiero comes along and he wants to prove that the Grand Symphony and the Phobos were real. And he believes that the only way to do this is to collect a special type of conch, which is like a shell. So he heads out to Pertrichor, and at the time it was just known as like a rundown fishing village. But he was in search of the Fated Castle, and again, the Fated Castle is the underground place where the Golden Troop hung out that has the floating books. And while he was there, he actually runs into Cassiodor. But he doesn't know who Cassiodor is. Cassiodor introduces himself as the Golden Hunter. And he's really impressed about how much the Golden Hunter knows about Remuria. And he also finds that everything the Golden Hunter is saying is like totally different than anything he's ever heard before. And that's because they lied. A lot of Cassiodor and the other people who survived Remuria who went to follow Egeria, they actually lied about what happened because they didn't want people to know the truth, basically. They didn't want people to find the Phobos. They didn't want people to bring it back. It was bad enough the Golden Troop was trying to do it.
Yeah.
And so he talks to this guy, and Ruggiero is like, this guy's sus. I wonder if he lived in Remuria, which, first off, what? What a far guess. I'm assuming this was at least 100 years later. And this guy's like, I think you're from Remuria.
Now, did he have, a chart behind him with little strings tied to tacks
like
with
Charlie
his conspiracy theories? Yeah.
Basically. He also mentioned something about immortality, I believe, so it would make sense too that he's like, what the fuck are you? Here's my conspiracy theories. And he actually ends up helping Cassiodor keep Boethius from opening these seals that would lead into Remuria. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how this random human got involved, but he did. And he wasn't able to find anything that he wanted in the Fated Castle. So he was like, all right. And he helped Cassiodor seal it. So then eventually Ruggiero realizes the terribleness of the Grand Symphonies. And he's like, oh, I'm not going to do that. He says, quote unquote, humanity has no need to, nor should they, control any knowledge beyond their abilities. Smart man. He's like, you guys don't deserve to have a Seelie's powers. And while Cassiodor left Pertrichor at this point and thanked him for all of his help, this guy decides to stay. And he decides that he's going to rebuild Pertrichor and makes it what it is today by inviting these other refugees to come and live there. And they spread tall tales and they talk about different legacies of these seals and the secrets of the town. And he makes Pertrichor a very magical, beautiful place. And he also gets help from this guy, Juliano, who is a wealthy... I'm saying Juliano. It might be Giuliano. I don't know. Who was a really wealthy and rich adventurer who helped him rebuild Pertrichor. And if you go to Pertrichor, there's a bunch of notes left by this guy everywhere. There's at least 2 or 3 that I remember finding. And he talks about what it means to rebuild Pertrichor for him. But the thing that sucks is that Ruggiero never got any accolades for anything that he did because they really didn't have a good academic situation going on. This wasn't Sumeru. They really didn't have a place for researchers and for academics and stuff like that. So he never really got the acknowledgement and the celebration that he should have for finding all of this out. So it's really sad.
Yeah.
Well, we're spreading the word now.
Yeah.
His legacy lives on with us.
Like Brandon was saying, we end up finding Cassiodor the cat. We unlock Scylla. We destroy the Phobos through song. It's very pitch perfect of us. And in the meantime, we find out all this crazy lore that we just went over in this history.
And then when Cassiodor's soul leaves,
sad,
his little cat body gets taken in by Este of the Daydream Club on Pertrichor. And Feeny and I are obsessed with the Daydream Club.
Yes. I was just gonna say, so the day I don't feel like we've ever really talked about the Daydream Club.
Are we gonna do an episode on it at some point?
I feel like we should because there's a lot.
I remember us getting really excited. We're gonna do an episode on this.
and then it didn't get panned in for the season.
Yeah, maybe next season.
But the Daydream Club, there's 4 people. We're going to include Este, that everyone listening, if you've been listening for a while, will recognize these names, or if you've been playing some of the recent quests, you might recognize them. You have Este, who takes in Cassiodor's cat. You have Xavier, our friend from Fontaine, who is making the
Dumb
movies.
hat.
Yeah, we first meet him in Inazuma, and then we meet him back in Fontaine making movies. And we also have Garcia, who is a daily in Sumeru, where you have to like make his things a certain way and give him certain things, and then it goes your way. And you also have Lady Grobel and Grispan. Lady Grobel is a cat. And
the director of the Daydream Club.
Yeah, is a cat, a black and white cat. It's not Cassiodor. And you can actually find Lady Grobel and Grispan in Natland for a daily. I ran into them all the time, and the first time I ran into them, I was like, wait, excuse me?
Grispan is not a cat, by the way.
Oh yeah, Grispan is a human. Lady Grobel is the cat. So yeah, that's some fun facts about them. We won't talk too much about them, but they're basically a Pertrichor-based group of like inventors.
Yeah.
And like they're all smart people, but they also have a lot of issues. I mean, if Xavier and Garcia, main example.
I feel like it's just a little island of Easter eggs.
Yeah. And there's a quest, I think it's with Garcia, where like he has like a girl that he likes in Fontaine, and he's in trouble. And we like go to take her back to Pertrichor, and she gets kidnapped or something. And then we like go diving. It's a lot.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was like, what the fuck is happening? I did want to say a few things too, just based on this, a few things that came to my mind while doing this. So first off, Remuria is a quote unquote legend place in Rome. So it is something that is said to exist. And basically there was these 2 brothers, Romulus and Remus. They were twins. And Remus saw like a bunch of birds in the sky, and they landed at a specific place, and he went, that's Rome. That's where we're going to make it happen. And that's why they built Rome where it is. That is the legend.
Mm-hmm.
But then eventually Remus and Romulus actually fight, and Romulus murders Remus. And Remus is said to be buried at this legendary city of Remuria.
Wait, so there's a real place called Remuria?
Yes.
Oh, I thought that it was Lemuria.
I think it's spelt a little differently. The main way of spelling it is Remoria, but they also spell it the same way as the game. They spell it as Remora, and they also spell it as Ramona, Remona.
Oh, no, see, okay, yeah, I'm thinking of something completely different. I'm thinking of Lemuria, which is like sort of rumored to be Atlantis by some.
Oh, that's so funny, actually, though. That seems more accurate to me.
Yeah.
Lemuria, a continent that is theorized to have sunk beneath the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, they took a lot of inspiration from different things.
That's cool. It was proven not true, but that's pretty fucking cool. And looking into Lemuria led to them discovering plate tectonics and continental drift, which is some pretty important shit, man.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first thing I wanted to bring up. The second thing I wanted to bring up was the fell flower prince. Give me 1 second. I know I just said it wrong.
The Fell Dragon?
The fell dragon prince.
You were too busy thinking of the fell flower.
Because that's all I could think
that
about.
involves albedo.
Albedo. So for those who don't know or who didn't play the event, and we do have an episode on the event, I believe it's Shadows Amidst Snowstorms. It is the Susbedo event. It's a big fucking deal. It's a limited time event that hides way too much important lore about Albedo and his life. But long story short is he has an impersonator. He actually has 2 impersonators, 2 people who pretend to be Albedo. And one of them is a whopper flower that is able to take on his form thanks to the blood of his brother Durin. And they call this flower the Fell Flower. And I never really understood why. So it's interesting to me that Scylla is now the Fell Dragon, and it's like, does that have something to do with gold? Also, everything going on in Remuria with consciousnesses reflects back on what gold is also doing in the Abyss with all these dragons. We look at Durin, we look at Alinus. We have these dragons who are just consciousnesses in the abyss being turned into dragons. So I'm very curious if, there's a part of me that's like, gold just made all the dragons. But I hope that's not true. But I think that's interesting that there's this connection of the Fell Flower and the Fell Dragon. I also think it's interesting during, I believe it was the Bottle Land summer event, there was like this stage quest that had like a flower that looked just like the Fell Flower when he like comes out to attack us. And it's just like, I feel like these little symbolisms from the Sospedo event keep popping up everywhere. And I'm like, why? What are we doing? And the only other thing I really wanted to bring up was the golden ichor. So we bring up this golden ichor, and I know I mentioned earlier that in like a lot of Greek mythology, ichor tends to be like a blood. And so the first thing that came to mind for me was Nanook, who is one of the gods, or I guess, was it an Aeon in Star Rail?
Eon. Mm-hmm.
And Nanook has like golden blood coming out of his like chest in like the graphic that depicts him. And so I'm very curious if there's any like connection with Star Rail there, and what could be going on. I feel like I haven't played enough of the Star Rail lore part of the game to really put together like a proper theory. But I am curious if we're going to find something out there.
Okay.
I thought one thing that was interesting I read this in doing my research. I did not think of it myself, although I wish I did. Remus is Sumer spelled backwards, which is the most ancient civilization in the world from Mesopotamia, the Sumerians.
Oh.
They created basically everything, like writing and the wheel and all sorts of stuff, but they are the most ancient civilization that we know of in history. And I thought that was a interesting little tie-in. Granted, we know that Remus also has a background too with Italian mythology, so who knows if it's related, but the fact that this is our most ancient civilization that we have, like, we can see things, I thought that was cool.
I always took Sumeru as being a reference to that Sumerian.
Yeah, except where's the U come from?
They just had to make it different.
But that would make sense too, because of the academia and everything that Mesopotamia is a whole mess of a lot of this stuff.
I was just gonna say, whenever I think of Mesopotamia, I just think of like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
I just think of a mess. It's just a mess.
Oh, no. I also think about the fact that they were like the first people to be like, our crops flooded, the gods are angry with us. And that's like really how like polytheism was born.
Mm.
And like the fact that like polytheism was around way before any monotheism. Because if Sumer was the original town, right? It was the original nation, the original life, whatever. Mm-hmm. Then they were like, oh, a god that gets mad at us? A water god.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't rained? A weather god.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had all these thoughts first. So I'm like, I've always wondered how we went from that. And then like still had like the Greek gods and everything. And then somehow we were like, Jesus is dead. Like,
Jesus is dead.
Like, we went from all these beautiful, wonderful gods to just like...
It's a consolidation of power.
It is, you're right. And I feel like our 3 or 4 power religions right now, they're all like monotheistic. And I'm like, whatever happened to Zeus?
Yeah.
Let's just go back to ancient Greece. Let's just, let's sacrifice people to...
I mean, we got a lot of kids. Some of them are dicks,
Is child sacrifice like still a thing?
I hope not. I mean, I'm okay with it, but I hope not.
I'm okay with it. No, you're not okay with it.
I mean, I'm okay with it in theory. In practice, I have a problem with it.
Okay.
It's like that Irish guy who was like, eat the children.
At this point, why not? I mean, look at us. Look at the world.
No, isn't that a book? Like, it's like an allegory on like on eating kids. I don't know.
On the United States of America.
An allegory on eating kids.
Oh, it's a modest proposal. A modest proposal for preventing the children of poor people from being a burden to their parents or country and for making them beneficial to the public.
So the United States of America, right?
Yes, it was published by Jonathan Swift. He was from Dublin.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
And it was like, he didn't actually want to eat the kids, but he was trying to like prove how like people can have really stupid ideas that make sense.
That reminds me of Alice thinking that people should eat the hilly churls or something. Do you remember that?
Yes,
Like
yes,
we
I
just
do.
create like a big, what was it, like a big oven or something, and it could actually be like really energy efficient.
In the big pot.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that.
Amanda puts her foot down.
No eating the hilly trolls. They were real too. Yeah, but like, I don't know. I think child sacrifice is still happening.
I mean, I'm just like thinking now that Alice is Hitler.
Oh, yeah.
Did Hitler do child sacrifice?
Well, no, but I mean, cooking hilly churl.
Oh.
This episode has got way too dark.
Yeah, it really has.
Well, anyway, so we're gonna move on.
Anyway, Carrara mail.
Yeah, Kirara is like looking at me like she's like, you should just paint your nails black already. Like, God, darkness is taking over. But so Kirara did give us a few messages for the week, so we're gonna go into our first message, which comes from Karate, and they said, "Hi, I'm Karate. I have a question. Have you noticed that of the Fatui Harbingers, no one, and I mean no one, talks about the 10th Fatui Harbinger? Then they also want us just to know that we are invited to their Ether Zhao wedding, and that they do believe that Albedo is best boy, but Sino is better. So I got questions about that. But I want to let you know that I'm actually the 10th Fatui Harbinger.
Okay.
I actually took a TikTok like quiz thing, like a filter, and it told me I was the 10th Fatui Harbinger. So but yeah, there's like they don't say anything about the 10th one. Child doesn't have a voice line about him.
Yeah, there's nothing, right? There's a symbol, and there's a weird graphic where every harbinger is represented by a symbol, and it's sort of in the shape of a clock because there's 12 of them, and even though there's 11 harbingers, but there's 11 plus 1, right?
Yeah.
So who do you think it could be? Because isn't the symbol like a hand with a swirly mark on it?
Yeah, I feel like wasn't that assumed for a long time to be the Marinette one?
I don't know. See, I don't know enough because I didn't even know about this until I read our notes ahead and saw this question.
Okay, because I picked the Kirara mail every week.
Yeah.
I mean, Kirara just lets me know ahead of time what the mail's gonna be for the week.
I was not even aware because I am not obsessed with the harbingers like a lot of people are, but I'm very curious now. Like, who could that be? And is it going to be so? And I have some theories.
Okay.
What if it's Rosaria?
Ooh.
I hate this already.
No, you love it.
Isn't the symbol, it's like a hand with like a swirly thing. The fingers of the symbol are sort of disconnected. I'm like, those could be her little claw things. But I just love the idea of like someone being like an undercover harbinger. And so no one ever talks about them. But,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, Rosaria would be the perfect fit. We know she likes to spy on people. Like, why wouldn't she be the, you know, spying on us as an agent, like a Fatui agent? But, you know, who I would really gag if it was them is Lisa.
Stop.
Because that would be like the biggest like shock and betrayal if she was like, you know, BFFs with Jean and she's like, turns out she's working for the Fatui
the whole time.
So those are my two theories.
So I don't really have a theory on this because I mean, it could be anyone, right? And it's really interesting because even like on the fan wiki, they like just totally skip over number 10. They have an alive section and they have a former member section, and there is no 10 anywhere. And you also have to remember that this is weird because there's also no 6 currently, and it's quote unquote now been vacant for hundreds of years because of, you know, Skara removing himself from the timeline. So the question becomes, is this person dead or are they alive?
Or is it our sibling and they remove themselves from Irminsul?
Oh, I don't like that.
I would like to provide some alternatives based on the Commedia dell'arte and some other characters that are involved, because we do know that the Commedia dell'arte is where most of the names for the Fatui Harbingers come from, and this is like an Italian play. It's kind of confusing because they're supposed to be Russian, but that's fine. So, some names that have not been mentioned at all yet. You have Beltram, you have Brighella, Giondua. So we have Brighella, Scapino, Isabella. Those are like the main characters because alongside those ones, there's 4 character archetypes that you could be, which is a Zani, a Vecchi, an Innamorati, or an Il Capitano, which is interesting that Il Capitano is a category.
Mm-hmm.
But, the clown servants are Arlecchino, Brighella, Scapino, Pulcinella, and Pedrolino. The Vecchi, which are wealthy people, are Pantalone and Dottore. The Inamorte, which is like upper class people in love, are Flavio, not to be mistaken for Fabio, and Isabella. And then the Il Capitanos, which are captains, are Signora and Scaramuccia, which you would assume is Scaramouche. So, I mean, we haven't met an Isabella or a Brighella or a Scapino or anything similar.
Well, a name that is somewhat popular in Italy is Rosaria.
Well, it's not on this list.
Just letting you know.
It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of questions. Like a Brighella, they say that their status, quote unquote, is that they're smart and vindictive servant classes, which just makes me think of Adeline in the Dawn Winery.
It's Barbara.
I mean,
it's Barbara. No, just kidding.
You never know. But it is curious that they don't mention anything about the 10th Harbinger. I mean, there's nothing.
If there was any bigger shock than Lisa to me, it would be
Barbara.
Babs. Yeah. If it's not Jean's friend / lover, it's her sister, her little sister.
Yeah, I almost wonder if the hand symbol is like magic.
I know, like what could it mean? Or maybe it's a weird Natland thing.
Do you think it's Hexen Circle?
I mean, it could be the Hexen Circle. I mean, could it be gold?
No, what if it's from Natland? Who would it be?
If it was a harbinger that like is currently alive in Natland?
When I Googled this, I saw people speculating online that it would be Auroran.
Oh, well, that was probably before he got found out. Was
happened.
just trying to protect his granny.
I know. What if it's Sitlali, and that's why she's always holed up in her room, quote unquote?
Why Capitano was looking for her?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but Auroran like protected her. Like I don't think Capitano would be looking for another harbinger. I think he'd know where to find her. You know?
I don't know. She likes to drink that fire water.
Yeah, but Scaramouche literally went missing and they sent like 3 people to find him. But like, so if Sitlali was missing, but like when you think of a hand, right? Like the first thing I think of is the Raiden Shogun boss battle.
Oh, I was thinking Magu Kenki, but yeah.
I could think of the Magu Kenki. I also think of the Scaramouche boss battle. But when I also think of hands, the other thing that comes to my mind is Krapus's delusion.
I saw that online too.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at the hand symbol, like I'm staring at it. And like besides feeling like I'm being hypnotized by the hand symbol, that's like all I could think about is like the delusion that Krapus wears. So I wonder if like I don't want to say it was Krapus. That would kill me a little bit. But like I wonder if there was someone who maybe like wore the delusion before Krapus got it, because we have no idea how he received it.
What would you do if it was Albedo?
Albedo's not a harbinger.
I mean, he may have been before he was born amongst the chalk.
What?
Born amongst the chalk.
He was literally birthed from the diamond on his neck.
Oh, actually, with all the delusion talk, it's Tepe. Tepe's gonna come out of the shadows, be like, "Guess what, bitches? I'm alive."
Terrible. I hate all of you. Maybe the other harbinger, the 10th harbinger, is the Saritsa, and she's just kept out to be kept out.
Yes, this way nobody knows that she's actually just a harbinger and not the Archon.
I hope not. That would be boring.
Yeah, but that makes the most sense. And I just want to say one more thing. Albedo, no, Tiff, come on. He was literally born from the diamond shape. No. Born from the diamond shape on his neck.
That could be what he remembers. There's a lot of Irminsul shit going on.
No.
I don't know.
No.
Is it Carry Bear?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know, man. It's a great question. I wish we knew.
I love it. I mean, we're gonna have conspiracy theories about this for a while now.
I feel like it'll be somebody brand new though.
Yeah. So thank you, Karate, because we're gonna be
Yeah.
speculating for a while.
I'm going to be figuring out every way possible that it's Albedo.
It's not.
Really want it to be Rosaria
Or the
Babs.
Fellflower.
No, not the fucking Bellflower. But thank you, Karate.
Wappy needs to come back. Come on now.
Whoppy's dead.
That doesn't mean he can't come back.
Or is he?
He's dead. Then number one, the first suspecto, he's still around. But anyway, our next question comes from Kimiko, and they said, which character has the worst time putting on their outfits in the morning?
This question is so funny.
I mean, Sino's got to look at those shorts and be like, fuck.
He puts them on with ease.
Sino.
He's like, man, I got to put these shits back on again. Can somebody make me pants?
I actually thought about this. I think it might be Navia because she has all these like little tiny bows on her outfit.
You don't think they're like glued together?
I mean, maybe, but I just feel like they're gonna get messed up and she's like constantly arranging them or something. But I guess the question is like putting it on in the morning. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's like not which one's going to get the most damaged in battle, but like who's like having a hard time putting their pants on and like buttoning everything.
But Clorinda's like distracting her a lot in the morning. So
I mean, Shenhas are really fucking tight. So if anybody's ever tried to put Spanx on.
oh wait, maybe it's Chaska. Because can we talk about how she has like the new best ass?
She does.
What?
Chaska, you don't think she has the new best ass?
I really haven't
Genshin?
looked.
Shalon is close to it too.
I have the character things up. I see it now. Whoa.
It's like insane.
I mean, that is like she's got the TikTok leggings on. That's helpful.
I feel like
That is
it looks
helpful.
like it's cutting the circulation of her leg off. Like I'm concerned.
I'm not. She like her leg. I could see her leg. It's not turning blue.
She's fine.
She doesn't look like Rosaria.
Oh,
I want to say personally that I think Tignari has the hardest time getting ready.
Oh yeah, he has so many items that he puts on.
Yeah, like his is just very layered. It's like if you look closely, he has like a black turtleneck on the very bottom, and then he kind of has like this blue short-sleeved hoodie. But he
Yeah.
also has like this, I guess the black turtleneck is really a navy blue turtleneck, and that's why his bow arm has like the full covering. He then has pants, the boots that he has to lace up. That's a lot of lacing.
Mhm.
And then he has to put on this white like cover up. He has two belts. He has the flower. He has the magnifying glass from his mother. He has another charm on his back. Which I mean, all these things are why he got struck by lightning.
he's wearing too much metal.
Yeah.
He's too conductive.
He also has a tail. Like he has to figure that out. He has a bag, and also he has an undercut. So he's got to like take care of his hair in the morning to make sure that it looks good.
Yeah, I'm gonna
That's-
give it. I'm gonna give that one. I actually agree with you.
And I think if I had to pick like a second person, I'm thinking too of like cosplayers that I've seen. Like I know Nouvelette's outfit is like heavy, but it's literally thigh-high boots and a jacket for the most part. And he does wear thigh-high boots. I hope that everyone is aware of that. They
Oh,
are thigh
of
fucking
course.
high.
Yeah. And tights underneath it.
Yes, with the tights underneath it, or their pants. I don't know which one. I was gonna give my second hardest originally to Arlecchino just because it's like full coverage but I guess I wear full coverage every day and it's not that fucking hard. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think hers is that much different from Nouvelette's, is it?
No, and I was gonna say Child too, but Child's literally showing me his belly. He did not give a fuck getting dressed. So I'm gonna give my second vote, and it's gonna sound very biased because I just picked my two favorite characters. But I'm gonna say Albedo as my second hardest because he has on tights, shorts, thigh-high boots, a metal undershirt question mark, then with his blue shirt, then his jacket, then like whatever that belt thing around his shoulder is. He's got a lot going on too. Like, it must feel so good to like take those tights off at the end of the day. I know from my own experience taking off my tights.
And you know, Clee's just dying to get rid of that backpack. She's always complaining. It's so heavy.
I would hate to be wearing bloomers.
Yeah, but I don't think this would be too difficult.
And I think we can definitely say it's not one of the women outside of the fact of if it's so skin tight, it just might take a minute. And D-Luke's got a lot going on there with his high pony.
That's
She
true.
does. I was thinking D-Luke. Rosaria, though, also has
She has those little
weird
claws.
belt thing going on.
Yeah.
And then like the straps on her legging. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, she's got a lot of buckles going on.
And then like her veil with, yeah.
And her fingernails and then her little like hanging butt plug.
And her little spy device that reports back to the Fatui.
Also, like, she has to get up, get dressed like this, and know that someone at the church is going to yell at her. Like, that's part of, like, her getting ready with me is, like, prepping for the yell.
She's like, there's only so much I'm willing to do for this spy gig.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, it's kind of like you said, Tiff. Like, I would want to say maybe Mona, but, like, it's just, like, slipping on something that's tight.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, she's a bodysuit and pants. I will say that I think the women's outfits, for the most part, would be the more uncomfortable ones to fight in and, like, wear on the day-to-day. But for getting dressed, I think they're pretty, like, slip on, slip off.
Well, I mean, maybe the real answer is Yanfei because she has to put on those boots and that hat every day.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it takes her so long, she's got to sing the song along with it.
But anywho, Kimiko, thank you for the question. That's all the time we have today, travelers. We hope you had fun coming way back in time with us and going down into the deep, dark sea of Remuria. The deep, emotionally dark sea of Remuria. If you like this episode, you can email us at talesofthepod@gmail.com to let us know what you think or to let us know what you hated about Remuria. Not us, but Remuria. You can also feel free to give us a follow, Tales of Teyvat Pod on Instagram or Tales of Teyvat on Twitter. Additionally, you can feel free to rate us wherever you listen to your podcasts, or you can feel free to buy us a cup of coffee /Diet Pepsi on Ko-fi. All proceeds and donations go toward paying for our editing softwares, our web hosting, and maybe, just maybe, some caffeine. Next week, we are going to be talking about the unfinished Reverie artifact set. It is one of our big episodes. We always love doing the artifact episodes, so make sure to stop on by. Otherwise, until then, safe journeys, travelers. We'll see you next time.
Bye, ancient Rome nerds.
What about Mesopotamia?
Mesopotamia.
That's a mess.
I'm a
Wow.
potato.